This is a video demonstrating how to use the Minor Ailments module in WinRx. There are two ways to initiate usage of this module. The first is to search for a patient, and when the patient is selected, press the Minor Ailments button or F5 to initiate the process. Alternatively, if a patient is already currently selected, the process can be initiated by clicking on the Minor Ailments button in the main screen. Normally, in a production version of the program, a network profile of a patient will be displayed when the minor ailment diagnosis is selected. Here, we're working in a development version of the program and no such network profile will be displayed. The first step is to confirm the patient's consent, eligibility, and whether or not they are physically present. If confirmation is false in response to any of these questions, this may be a virtual assessment, or the patient may be ineligible. In any case, we can proceed with the assessment unless the answer to all questions is false, in which case we're taken back to the main screen, because minor ailments are not available for this patient. Assuming the patient is eligible, we now proceed with the assessment, assuming the diagnosis is cystitis. In this first example, we'll assume that diagnosis leads to prescription. Leaving out all details of the medical history, we'll simply enter a few symptoms for sake of example. We'll also specify the drug which is being prescribed. When the form is completed, it should be saved by clicking on the Save button, or all record of the data entry will be lost. Next, we'll verify what's being prescribed and what the minor ailments form will look like. You're prescribing this drug, would you like to continue with it? We'll say yes in this situation. Now, we can see the form has been completed in the prescription area, and the Rx description, quantity, day supply, and the SIG are pre-populated with the correct values. There are situations in the forms where there's no specific drug, in which case you'll be asked to enter one from your local drug file. To do a prescription in minor ailments, you must return from this form with an actual DIN number. This is a little different than what a physician prescribes because they don't know what drugs are available in the store. The pharmacist doing this assessment knows what he has in the store and should specify a particular drug that the person later entering this into PharmaNet knows is correct and can just proceed with. Now, we're going to verify input again, and we're going to say we don't want this particular drug, we'll go with another one. Let's try this particular drug, this manufacturer now. We have to specify the quantity and the day supply. Now, we can see the program has gone off and changed the prescription. The day supply is of course what we entered. And it's come up with a SIG, a different SIG, because this is the one that's actually on file with the drug in the local database. Now, in some cases you may not want to prescribe any of the drugs that are optional for this diagnosis that are displayed in this form. In which case, you still have to select something, because we have to know that you intend to prescribe. But when you go to finish the prescription, whether you're doing verify input or finish, you'll be asked to state whether or not this is the drug you really want, and you can prescribe whichever drug you choose. In this case now, we'll finish our example. We enter our initials for electronic signature. Now, the follow-up process is initiated automatically at the end of filling out the form. Notify in days is populated with a number of days that a typical general practitioner would recommend be used for each particular diagnosis. In this case, advise the follow-up in 3 days because the drug you're prescribing should have some effect in that time period. The reason is obvious. Contact by phone. This will bring up a list of the patient's phone contacts in the order in which they are preferred. In this case, the patient can be accessed by text or phone. Phone is his preferred method, and we'll use this for the time being. We'll demonstrate how to do the text in the next example. The assign and priority fields are not used at this time for minor ailments, but are used in tracking other medical conditions in other situations, and the same follow-up process is involved in following those diagnoses. A scheduled message will come up. This will either be in your save list or will be a default one if no previous message has been saved. If I try to save this message, it'll tell me I already have this one saved, so I can't put in another one, but you can type in your own messages here. This note field can be used to specify anything unique about this assessment that you want to convey to other practitioners as communications follow through for this diagnosis for this patient. So we can say anything unique about this assessment. And we're done. The assessment is completed, and we can see in the ERX transactions there are 2 items. At the top, we have the assessment itself, and beside it, the form. We can see the form has been signed. And below it, the prescription. We'll send the service to Pharmanet first by processing it. We can see the form is filled out correctly with quantity, day supply, and the pharmacist who is doing the prescription, and the intervention code DE, which is what is used for minor ailments assessments. And we'll fill that. That's done. Let's fill the prescription the same way. Again, it brings up the drug description, who's doing the prescription, the cost, the SIG, and we're done. And we sign for it electronically. Nothing else to do. When we did the follow-up in the assessment by phone, what the program did is insert something in the memos list so we know that on the 13th day of the 7th month, this follow-up should be done. We're just going to process this now to see what the process is. When we do the follow-up, it's going to bring up the form that we previously filled out, at which point the user would typically indicate that there are no symptoms, for sake of example. We'll assume in this particular case that it's been successful. You don't really have to uncheck these because when we save this and finish it and sign it, we can indicate what in fact should happen. The treatment is successful. We don't have to worry about the number of days. It's not going to do a notification. Contact by phone. This doesn't matter. There's no scheduled message. We're done. Now we can see in the patient's file in their documents, we have the assessment that we did. We see we actually did two things when we did it. We sent it when we did it. This is the date. And this is the record associated with the follow-up. And if we look at that particular item, we can see there are no diagnoses. And this is the form that we filled out when we did the follow-up. How can we tell the status? Well, a record is kept of all the communications this patient has done. And if we go into live tracking, we'll see that we have a communication with this patient, the status was completed, and the treatment was successful. And if we hit enter on this item, we can see all the details, the note history, no message sent, who the recipient was, and various other details. The next demonstration will be how to do a minor assessment containing a referral. We'll select the patient again, go to the minor ailment feature, and we'll do something for headache. Ineligible patient, and we'll simply say we should refer because there's been head trauma. Save our result, go to finish. Whenever we do a referral or something which might be referred, we'll get asked the question, do you wish to refer? We'll say yes in this case. And I'm going to direct this to a telemedicine consult, so I don't have to print the report. We can print the report there. And we're done. And we'll sign for the referral. And in this particular case, we don't have to notify anybody. Our referral has been advised. Contact by phone doesn't matter. There won't be any contact. All we have to do is click the Done button. We have in our ERX tables the assessment for the headache, and if we go to that, we'll see that the PIN used for the PharmaNet transaction is the correct one for our minor ailment, where it's a headache and there is a referral. Now, if we go to the patient record, we can look at their documents, and we can see the assessment for the headache. Signed in the wrong place. And here is the referral. When doing a telemedicine appointment, there is an option to transfer a document to the doctor doing the appointment. And this is the document you would select. This is the referral in ISBAR format. And it contains the situation, i.e. headache, and the assessment, the reason for the assessment. It may be that there are several reasons for the assessment that you've chosen in the form, and they will be listed here. And there are a number of current medications listed for this patient. In the final example, we'll be doing a minor ailment where we have to follow up a number of times to get the treatment correct. So, for the current patient, we'll go to minor ailments again, and this time select hemorrhoids. And say yes to this. Now we won't prescribe any drugs, we'll do a referral. We'll just do an advisory treatment program. So, we'll just increase fiber, save the encounter, and then finish it. Now, normally we'd be following up with this patient in 7 days and assessment follow-up in a normal fashion, but this time we'll go by text. And what this will do is put in a reminder that will be automatically sent to this patient in 7 days with this message. And we will be done. Now, stepping ahead a few days, I've put in a message that was sent before. And we can process it as if we were getting the response back from the patient. So we'll go to text message history. We can see here's the message that I put in as a dummy one. In real life, this message will be exactly what we saw in the message that we used to transmit. But the response from the patient would be something like this. And in this case, there's pain involved. So, when we highlight this row and we go to follow-up, we're again presented with the form. The question is now what to do with this patient. Well, since there's pain, it's probably reasonable to say the symptoms have not improved and we should refer it. So we'll save this and we'll go to finish. And this is why we wish to refer it? Yes. And we'll send this one to the primary care doctor. Enter user ID for the signature. Now, in this case, we received a message by text saying the patient was still having symptoms. So we want to respond immediately to their text, and we can tell them to continue the current treatment, but to try and see a doctor. And this message will go out as soon as we complete this window. What we might want to do in some number of days, let's say 7, is confirm the patient has contacted a physician, and in this case, we can put in whatever message we want, and we might want to type something in like this. What that will do, if the patient has trouble finding a family doctor, is to make a telemedicine appointment for them. And now what we'll do is we'll complete this window. Out of the screen. In our patient documents, we'll see the hemorrhoid assessment we originally did, the referral we just did, and this is what will be sent to the family doctor. And we can now track the communications going on with this patient in our life tracking module. With life tracking, we're able to look at all the communications we've had with the patient, with any of the treatments we've diagnosed, and see what the status is, as well as the history of the communication. And in this case, it's pointing to the last time we did something for the patient, and the last message that we've sent them. And we'll be able to add to these notes, since they're in progress, as the course of treatment for the patient is established. There are a number of other features available in this window which will allow pharmacists to track other conditions for patients and input lab results and other communications relating to other diseases. Minor ailment is just a small part of that, of course, but the functionality for follow-up is the same for everything. When we look back at the text messages that we've sent, we'll see that we've just sent the test patient this message, and we'll get a reply back from him in time about whether he wants us to do anything or whether he's made arrangements already. However, if we want to do a follow-up on this patient, there are a few common situations which need to be considered. You may wish to do a new assessment for a minor ailment you've already treated the patient for. If you are communicating with the patient via email, there is no automatic way of getting into the follow-up process when you receive a response from them. Or, a patient may contact you about a condition you're treating them for, which is outside the normal flow of communication. That is, where you notify the patient and they return a response. In these situations, the proper thing to do is to access the patient and go to the documents you have on file for them. You would select the assessment for the particular minor ailment that you want to deal with. When you do that, you have the option of reassessing, that is, issuing a new assessment for the patient that will be billed to PharmaNet, or following up in the usual manner. In both cases, the processes are the same as we've demonstrated. The advantages of doing it, that is doing a reassessment instead of a brand new assessment, is that the communication record for that minor ailment is kept in one place. And each time you access it, either reassessing it or following it up, you have a complete record of everything you've done, referring to the treatment of that particular minor ailment. Now, suppose the patient phones us and tells us that they are able to make an appointment with their doctor. What we can do is go to their record and look at their documents, and then look at their hemorrhoid situation, and do an assessment follow-up. In this case, all we have to do is finish it. In this case, the treatment is successful. That concludes our overview of minor ailment processing in WinRx. It may be apparent now what the reasons are for implementing things in the way we've done. The forms we're using are provided by the BCPHA free and are integrated in the program so they are populated with patient information and can be updated with data already in WinRx. The forms provide a consistent and medically approved way of entering medical history and the reasons for treatment. The data points in the form can be reviewed in the follow-up process to determine a new course of action. And the form data can be analyzed to evaluate treatment effectiveness. Overall, the forms and the method demonstrated provide a consistent way to share data with other practitioners.